This is Adventist World Radio, the voice of hope. It's another wonderful day that the Lord has made that we share more on this New Life program. Stay tuned, for we have plenty on this program. I'm your host, Chileno Diambo. Thank you for keeping it Adventist World Radio, the voice of hope. Today, Brother Dan Obato will be sharing more on mugging and its effects, then followed by a word from the Holy Bible by Pastor Kigundu entitled, Gifts That Sun-Lave the Titanic. For now, here is some sweet melodious tune just for you.
Take time to be holy, speak oft with thy Lord, abide in him always, and feed on his word. Make friends of God's children, help those who are weak, forgetting in nothing his blessing to seek. Take time to be holy, the world rushes on. Spend much time in secret with Jesus alone. By looking to Jesus, like him thou shalt be. Thy friends in thy conduct his likeness shall see. Take time to be holy, let him be thy guide, and run not before him, whatever betide, in joy or in sorrow, still follow thy Lord, and looking to Jesus, still trust in his word. Take time to be holy, become in thy soul, each thought and each motive beneath his control, thus led by his Spirit to fountains of love, the soul shall be fitted for service above.
Welcome back, my dear listener. Here is Brother Dan Obato with more on spouses.
In our today's program, we're going to talk about nagging, and we're going to see the effects of nagging. A number of years ago, Napoleon III, a nephew of Napoleon Bonaparte, fell in love with the Countess of Teba and married her. Napoleon and his bride had health, wealth, power, fame, beauty, love, and adoration. They were headed for a perfect romance, but their love soon flickered, cooled, and died completely. Napoleon could make Eugenie an empress or empress, but neither the power of his love nor the might of his throne, nothing in all the France, could keep her from nagging. Jealousy bedeviled her, and suspicion devoured her. She feared that he might be seeing another woman. What did Eugenie's nagging accomplish? Now Napoleon, with a soft heart, pulled over his eyes and accompanied by one of his intimates, frequently would steal out by a side door at night and betake himself to some fair lady who was expecting him. Eugenie sat on the throne of France. She was one of the most beautiful women in the world, but nothing could keep Napoleon's love alive amid the poisonous bite of nagging. It is difficult for a man to love a nagging woman, for her nagging reminds him of childhood days when his mother told him to put on his galoshes, button his coat, and not to talk with his mouth full. A psychiatrist once asked a nagging wife, "When you tear your husband down all the time, how can you expect him to love you? If he wants to find out what's wrong with him, let him go to the psychiatrist and hate him for telling the truth. You can't afford to provoke his hate." Women too feel crushed under a barrage of criticism and fault-finding. They find little enjoyment in cleaning house, caring for children, or preparing meals for men who criticize their efforts. Being accepted as we are in a basic human need, and we search until we find it. Unacceptance wounds the bride, hurts self-esteem, and arouses resentment. One's first line of defense may be a verbal counter-attack, or it might come through being stingy, stubborn, lazy, uncooperative, unloving, silent, withdrawn, or through other acts of hostility. The more the other person nags, complains, or criticizes, the more one's resentment may increase. Indeed, an unaccepted person may even begin to spend time away from home in search of someone who does accept him and loves him just as he is. A resentful person often secretly vows to get even somehow. One woman confessed during a class session on acceptance that she had been trying to change her husband for 35 years. She admitted devoting 2 days out of every week to this project, but she had failed and now felt bitter, tired, and lonely. Complete with tears, she lamented the past 35 years spent in a useless pursuit. Another woman told of listing all her husband's faults in the backside of the 12 calendar pages. She admitted driving both her husband and her son from the home by her constant attacks. Neither of them changed. The family was reunited only after her husband suffered a heart attack. It really shocked her into appreciating his true worth. Considering the problems created through attempts to change a mate's behavior, the tension, the lack of communication, and the effects on the children, ask yourself, is it worth it? Is changing your mate to suit your ideas more important than a happy home, a loving partner, and emotionally secure children? Why have you attempted to change your partner? If you're honest, you will probably admit that you do it because he or she needs to change. Perhaps through feminine insight or masculine logic, you have detected areas in your mate's life that need working on so that both of you can be happier and more joyful. Maybe you even feel it is honorable to help your spouse overcome weak areas and achieve a more acceptable personality. After all, it is for her own good. Yet despite these noble-sounding purposes, a basic Christian principle is being violated. The heart of the Christian message revolves around changing ourselves, not our ability to change others.
Dear listener, I'm glad that you're still tuned. To get more on this program or be able to participate, send your comments and thoughts to the producer, Adventist World Radio, P.O. Box 42276, code 00100, Nairobi, Kenya, or on our email address awrnairobi@eau.adventist.org.
The mystic voices sounding, Christ is nigh, it seems to say. Cast away the dreams of darkness, O ye children of the day. Startled at the solemn morning, let the earthbound soul arise. Christ, her Son, all sloth dispelling, shines upon the morning skies. Lo, the Lamb so long expected comes with pardon down from heaven. Let us haste with tears of sorrow, one and all to be forgiven. So when next he comes with glory, wrapping all the earth in fear, may he then as a defender on the clouds of heaven appear.
It's another wonderful time that we invite Pastor Kigundu to feed us with the spiritual bread to nourish our souls and warm our hearts with the topic on mugging and its effects. Stay tuned.
Dear listener, I want to welcome you to our Biblical Stewardship series. Today I want us to look at the gifts that survive the Titanic. Well, historians think it may be the third most written about story of all time, right after Jesus Christ and the American Civil War. It happened on a cold April 14 back in 1912, the sinking of the Titanic, of course. There's something about that tragedy that fascinates people. How an unsinkable ship can hit a North Atlantic iceberg on its maiden voyage, and then 1,523 people have a full 2 hours and 40 minutes to basically wait to drown at 2:20 in the morning. After 17 movies, 18 documentaries, and at least 130 books already, CBS aired a 4-hour miniseries giving another look at the tragedy. And James Cameron put $120 million worth of disaster up on the big screen for Titanic, and its hundreds of tiny subplots to unfold yet again. But you know, there's something about this icy story that illustrates Bible truth. 1 Corinthians 13 explores the topic of pure love, agape love. Many other things are mentioned in this chapter too. Some bad things and also some good things. After envy and pride and self-centeredness and grudge-keeping, which are the very antithesis of love, the chapter moved to a more positive list. There is prophecy, a good thing. There is biblical knowledge, another recommended commodity. The eloquence of what the Bible calls tongues is also one of heaven's gifts. And yet, verse 8 tells us that all other things will pass away. Prophecy and knowledge and tongues are all going to come to an end. Their usefulness will cease and they'll be relegated to the sidelines. But then there are these three words: love never fails. In other words, love stays. Unlike prophecy and knowledge, love doesn't ever become obsolete. Right at the end of chapter 3, that is verse 13, Paul clearly says it again. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. Now there are several points to be made here, and you've got to be wondering what they have to do with the Titanic. Now, let's think about that one, shall we? First thing I want us to note is that gifts are temporal. First of all, we would easily agree that love is going to survive this beat-up old planet. Our skyscrapers may fall, and the sinful kingdoms will be toppled, and orphanages and bars and prisons are going to be bulldozed by heaven's armies. But love, the very epitome of God's own character, will survive. Paul is right. As long as there is a God, there'll be love too. But isn't it interesting that good spiritual things like prophecy are said to be temporary? Of course, that makes sense when you stop and think about it. Prophecy in God's word has been provided as a gift to show us the future, to give us confidence in the ways and the methods of God, to provide us with signposts to the kingdom. But after we are in the kingdom, will we keep looking for signposts? Will we need confidence boosters when our King and Savior are dwelling among us? Therefore, there wouldn't be a need for prophecy when the source of all prophecies is living right next door as our neighbor. The same is true as the gift of tongues. Whether you think of the Bible's gift of tongues as the ability to speak many foreign languages or an ecstatic experience to worship to God in a language you don't even know, isn't it plain that when we enjoy face-to-face fellowship with our Redeemer as one unified redeemed body, we won't need that gift? We'll be right there. We'll see Him face-to-face, and that is what verse 12 says. It is likewise with knowledge. Think of people who invent Pentium chips and write great books and build the tallest buildings. But when we get to heaven, what will become of our opinions of our great knowledge? Again, as Paul describes himself, we realize that now we know in part. And it's a pretty tiny part, my friend. So, do you see how Paul cuts right through our little list of accomplishments? He says, now we know in part, he writes. We prophesy in part, but when perfection comes, the imperfection disappears. Much of what we have learned will vanish in what this verse is rendered in the clear word paraphrase. What does it say? So many of what we lovingly and even proudly call our spiritual gifts are going to melt away when we bow at Jesus' feet in heaven, aren't they? All the Bible definitions we have memorized will fade away in paradise. Useful tools they have been, to be sure. Let's not misunderstand. We want to thank God for our gifts and use them all we can here on this earth. But what greater glory to be in the presence of God. One writer puts it this way: the light of a candle loses its importance when placed in the bright light of the sun. And in a way, this is where I think Paul is taking us in his next paragraph. He says, when I was a child, I talked like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put childish ways behind me. Then he goes on. Now we see but a poor reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part. Then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. What a picture he paints, where our old thoughts, made so murky by sin and selfishness and confusion, are finally cleared away when we reach the distant shore. The fog and the smog and the haze are gone. The dreadfully limiting effects of sin are gone. And, dear listener, soon we will be going home. The talented contemporary Christian group GLAD sings about this in their song, When He Comes Again. It goes something like this. And when He comes again to take us home, and oh, to know His love and grace, to finally see His face, our King, no longer through a dim and clouded glass, when Jesus comes to take us home at last. As Paul describes it, boys turn into men. Spiritually speaking, small children whose fondest dream was to drive the little car at Disneyland are given keys to the real Cadillacs. What does all this mean? Nothing we have piled up here on earth is going to survive the trip to the New Jerusalem. Our talents and gifts and assets and bank accounts, they're all going to be obsolete. Oh, we'll have assets there too, and talents and abilities, but they'll be so vastly improved, so completely different, that we may as well consider that we are starting anew. Which takes us back to the Titanic. Nothing survives, the Bible tells us, except faith, hope, and love. None of our carefully packaged suitcases, our luggage, our trinkets and treasures are going to make it across the cold, dark ocean. In the CBS miniseries of the Titanic, multimillionaire Job Ostrafor goes down into the watery grave along with his money and his cat. And when you look at that story, you find the great people go down that grave. Benjamin Guggenheim, traveling with his mistress, changes into a fine evening clothes before perishing in the 28 degrees freezing water. All the fortunes in the world couldn't keep the 882 feet of ocean liner going down to the bottom of the Atlantic with its 1,523 victims. Only love survives. How true it is, as Paul writes, that nothing is going to survive except love. So what are you piling up today, right now? Talents and possessions, or even some characteristics, traits you are kind of proud of? 1 Corinthians chapter 12, which describes spiritual gifts, explains that we don't all have the same gift. We can't all have the same thing. It might be impossible for you to be a preacher or a prophet, no matter how hard you try. Rather than being a spiritual gift is a fruit of the Spirit. It's in the classic list of 9 over in Galatians 5 verse 22-23. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Love, dear listener, is not a spiritual gift. It's a fruit of the Spirit. That means every single one of us can have it. The number one thing that survives, Paul tells us, is a thing we can have. We can indeed learn to love in a way this beautiful chapter commends and commands. Is your confidence misplaced today? Invested in Titanic stock? There is a beautiful text to note in the New International Version study helps that says, love supersedes the gifts because it outlasts them all. Long after these sought-after gifts are no longer necessary, love will still be the governing principle that controls all that God and His redeemed people are and what they do. Love remains, Paul tells us. Love outlasts them all. If you knew that was true of a certain kind of stock, wouldn't you begin to do some investing? Dear listener, let's invest in love, for love survives the Titanic.
That marks the end of our program this day. Thank you for staying tuned, and I hope you have enjoyed this program. Remember to send us your comments and thoughts to the producer, Adventist World Radio, PO Box 42276, code 00100, Nairobi, Kenya, or on our email address awrnairobi@eau.adventist.org. On behalf of the New Life production team and those who work to ensure this program has come to a success, we thank you so much. I have been your host, Tileno Diambo. Be blessed.
Take time to be holy. Speak oft with thy Lord. Abide in him always, and feed on his word. Make friends of God's children. Help those who are weak. Forgetting in nothing is blessing to seek. Take time to be holy. The world rushes on. Spend much time in secret with Jesus alone. By looking to Jesus, like him thou shalt be. Thy friends in thy conduct his likeness shall see. Take time to be holy. Let him be thy guide, and run not before him, whatever betide. In joy or in sorrow, still follow thy Lord, and looking to Jesus, still trust in his word. Take time to be holy. Be calm in thy soul. Each thought and each motive beneath his control. Thus led by his Spirit to fountains of love, thus soon shall be fitted for service above.
The world is very evil, the times are waxing late. Be sober and keep vigil, the judge is at the gate. The judge that comes in mercy, the judge that comes with might to terminate the evil, to diadem the right. Lo, he comes with clouds descending, once for favored sinners slain. Countless angels him attending, swell the triumph of his train. Hallelujah, hallelujah, Jesus comes and comes to